Chapter 9. The Courthouse. I stuck to streets hardly traveled, ones by building where most of the VOs had been found, so I didn't bump into anybody. Most of the structures were run down, their windows either open or totally smashed. Occasionally I passed a mangy, stray dog or cat, but they paid me no attention. As usual, they were probably just digging around for food scraps. I took most of the morning to reach the Middleton Patrol Department headquarters, where the patrol kept criminals before it gave them a short trial. If the patrol found them guilty, it tossed them into the actual prison farther down the street. I reached the station just before noon. The large brick building rose in front of me as I made my way along the sidewalk. My stomach fluttered. The imposing building reminded me of the mansion's tall iron gate. It practically said, "No way you're going to break Marf out of this thing, Gorin. No use even trying." I checked out the area. Nobody was outside. Not surprising. You'd have to be crazy like me to try break somebody out of the patrol department. All the building's doors were kept locked at all times, and the inside was crawling with officers. Same with the courtyard in the back. I'd checked out the latter and peeked through enough of the building's windows in my day to know. Plus, there was no way a prisoner could break out of his cell's barred window. Yeah, this was going to be tough, if not impossible, but I had to give it a shot. I took a deep breath, heart thumping heavily in my chest, then slunk across the street and entered a dim alleyway along the right side of the station. I'd been here a few times in the past just to explore, so I knew my way around. Curiosity killed the cat. I shivered. I stopped by the first row of bars that lined the side of the building. Crap, too high up to look into. Despite the risk, I was going to have to call out Marf's name. No other choice. "Marf," I whispered. "Psst, Marf, you there?" No answer. I went to the next set of bars. "Marf, psst. Marf, come on, answer me." I glanced toward both ends of the alleys, but there was still nobody around. No criminals peeked between their bars either. Maybe it was a dry season for crimes or something. I just moved past half the rows of bars, deeper into the alley, where it would be harder for anybody outside it to hear me, or see me because of the dimness, when a familiar high-pitched voice asked, "Gore?" I looked back toward the row I just passed. Marf stared down at me. The bars ran across his face as though crossing him off from existence. His mouth hung open, eyebrows knitted. "Marf!" I ran up to the wall. "What are you doing here, man?" His voice shook as he narrowed his eyes at me. "I came to get you out." He snorted. "Get me out? Don't be ridiculous, man. There's no way you can get me out of this awful joint." "How do you know? I mean, there's gotta be some." "That's not the point anyway. I don't want to leave." "What? Are you out of your mind? You want to live here the rest of your life behind bars?" Mark just stared at me. "Well, it's better than you freeing me." His face gleamed a pinkish gray, every muscle in it tense. "You ruined my life, man. You're the worst friend a guy could ask for." Even though I knew it was true, he might as well have taken a torch and lit my head on fire instead of saying it out loud. "I know, Marf. Believe me, I get it." "Right." He pulled his head away from the bars. "No, wait, please, let me explain." He brought his face back into view, but a little further away from the bars. "You were right all along," I said. "You were right all along, and it took me doing something dumb like convincing you to help me to visit the mansion to realize it." "You didn't convince me, man. I'm not that stupid. I just knew you wanted to do it so bad." Typical defensive Marf. Couldn't pin anything on him. "Yeah, believe me, I really appreciate that you helped me, but now I know I should have just done what I was supposed to do and not question the leaders. Then none of this horse crap would have happened." The intense scowl stayed on Marf's face. "Whatever. Because of you, we're both chicken feed. I got an appointment at the courthouse at noon. They'll convict me for sure, man. The last year of my life behind bars. No baby, no tournament, no legacy. Nothing." He slammed his fists against the bar so hard they made a clang. I glanced towards the end of the alley, but there was still nobody around. Still, I had to calm Marf down because if he kept up this racket, somebody was bound to hear us eventually. "Look," I said, "you know I never would have asked you to help me find the mansion in a billion years if I knew this was going to happen." Marf let out a long, weary sigh. "I don't want to talk to you, man. I don't even want to look at you. You know, I always knew I should have had your job. I might not be as big and strong as you, but at least I know not to poke my head where it doesn't belong." He started to pull away from the bars again. "Wait!" I yelled. I yelled so loudly it echoed in the alley. Crap. But I was losing Marv fast. If I was going to make a move, I had to do it now. If I could get you out, would you come with me? I know you just said you wouldn't, but you also said your life is chicken feed if you stay here. If you escape, we'd at least have a chance. Live somewhere on our own. Lead our own lives. You wouldn't be able to continue your, legacy or win the tournament of prestige, but you could be free. Marv bit his lip, his gaze drifting away from me. Then he slowly shook his head. All those things you just said, that's what I lived for, man. I don't want to do anything else. I know, but being free would be better than rotting away in that cell your whole 16th year, right? He chewed on his lips some more, lolled his head from side to side. Even if you could break me out, and even if we could live on our own, where are we gonna go, man? I might be a tough guy and great at hunting. For the first time during this conversation, I fought the urge to roll my eyes. But it's too risky to live in the center of Middleton, and obviously the suburbs would be even riskier. And we can't leave town. There are all those savage tribes past the farms. A light shudder ran through his puny shoulders. Right. The tribes. We had learned in our nature factions that groups of kids who'd broken off from nearby towns lived in the miles upon miles of cornfields and woods that surrounded Middleton. Even back in the old world, Middleton had been a big town, a massive source of civilization, but it was smack dab in the middle of nowhere. The tribes didn't have many VOs, so they lived off all that open land. Some were even nomadic, but the stories we'd heard, how they killed any kids who wandered into their territories and ate them. I shuddered. But Marv just hit on something big. That's just the place. I mustered the biggest smile I could. The farms. Supposedly, the tribes didn't come that far into town. They knew not to get too close because we had guns and weapons. We can stay in a farmhouse. There's plenty of open forest around there, and then we'd have the entire place to ourselves. How precious would that be? Supposedly the rulers had picked the farmhouses clean of VOs ages ago, so nobody from Middleton lived there either. Too far away from the middle of town in the mansion, I guessed. A long silence. I'm telling you, it's our only chance. If we don't try, both our lives are going to be chicken feed like you said. He nodded slowly. Maybe, A loud click came from behind him, and he ducked out of view before a long creak of a door opening tore through the air. You, somebody inside said in a gruff voice. Time for your trial. Follow me. Crap. I might have been too late. I glanced at my watch. 12 o'clock on the dot. The jail door shut with a clang. I dashed along the alley toward the back of the station. I leaned against the wall and craned my neck round the corner. The station's back door opened and Marv's short, scrawny figure exited, his hair a mess of black shocks like always. He looked even more pitiful than usual with his hands cuffed behind his back and the tall, muscular patrol officers, they had to be 16 years old, that flanked him on all sides. Even though their faces were dark gray and splotchy, they strode confidently with burly legs, not to mention guns poked out of holsters on their waists. They really weren't taking any chances of Marv escaping. Come to think of it, was there a reward for capturing me? Was there a slew of prestige points on my head? The party headed across the courtyard, which the weeds were mercilessly trying to tear up. No matter what the Battlelux family learned from all those VOs, no doubt the weeds would eventually reign over Middleton. Marv and his captors edged around the giant hole in the middle of the courtyard. Maybe a statue used to sit there? And reached the courthouse on the other side. The building was even bigger than the police station and much more priceless. It was built out of white limestone, like the mansion. A series of tall columns and a long, wide staircase framed its entrance. After Marv's party climbed the steps and entered the courthouse, I darted into the courtyard. There wasn't much cover, so I tried to stay near the random scraggly trees along the path. When I reached the courthouse, I sprinted along its side. I stopped and peered through the first window, which was broken like most windows out in town thanks to generations of supply hunting. Shards of glass still clung to parts of the frame. Even though darkness stared back, I knew a courtroom was inside because I'd not only explored the outside of this building before, but also this room itself. But that was the old me. I continued to check the windows until I found a room lit with the orange glow of torches that lined its walls. This had to be where they'd bring Marv. Rows of wooden benches stretched out before a large judge's desk on the left. A boy who looked as old as me sat at the desk. He wore black clothes and held a wooden gavel. Right. Boys got boy judges, and girls got girl judges. I held back a gasp. Dustin's huge figure eclipsed Nez's at a table near the judge. Must have been the two eyewitnesses, since you need at least two to be accused of a crime. Such a dumb rule. Then again, it made sense for the Battlelux family to try to cut back on kids lying about other kids committing crimes. Kids were always doing that to people they didn't get along with, or who were from competitive factions. Still, everybody knew the rule didn't work all that well. Dustin and Nez's cold, sharp eyes made it obvious Marv was going to be put away for the rest of his pitiful life, unless I did something. Fast. Of course, this courtroom's windows were still intact. Figures. Though that was probably why they were using the room. I grabbed the frame and tried to pull the window up, careful not to use too much force, but it wouldn't budge. As locked as Marv's face. The courtroom door opened and Marv entered, his eyes distant, expression defeated. The officers surrounded him. My heart kept charging against my ribcage. Think, Goran, think. I looked back toward the courtyard, then ran over to it, grabbed a loose stone, and raced back to the window. Marv sat at the bench closest to the judge's desk. The judge was talking, though I couldn't hear what he was saying. He motioned for Marv to step up to the podium, the piece of furniture closest to the window. If I remembered right from my Nurture faction lessons, the alleged criminal got to speak first, then the eyewitnesses, and then the judge gave his verdict. This would be my only chance. I took a deep breath, stepped a couple of feet back from the window, wound my arm back as far as it would go, and hurled the stone at the window.